Hello everyone. Thanks very much for the helpful feedback, which did include some comments that actually the previous video was a bit too long. So I'm going to break it down into some nice bite-sized chunks. And the first one today is just going to look at those three terms which tend to be used interchangeably but actually have different meanings in terms of legal status and rights. So we're going to start with migrant. Migrant is a term that actually has a very broad meaning. Anybody who moves away from their usual place of residence, whether that's within a country or to another country, is a migrant. So almost anybody living here in Donegal could be classed as a migrant if they're not originally from here. So that includes people from Dublin, from Cork, from Galway. Technically speaking, if you move from Glencolmkill to Donegal town, maybe in search of work, that makes you a migrant. In fact, it makes you an economic migrant. We hear a lot of talk about economic migrants as well. Economic migrants is somebody who migrates to improve their economic situation. An example of an economic migrant would be somebody from outside of Ireland who works in Letterkenny Hospital, because there's better job opportunities for them here in Ireland and Donegal than there is wherever they're from. Equally, a lot of Irish people have migrated in search of better economic opportunities to Dubai, to Australia, from Donegal to Dublin. All of these are migratory situations, but there are also a lot of people who come to do things like study. So an international student is also a migrant. Generally, anybody who moves for a sustained period of time, like not a tourist, but anybody who goes to live somewhere for a sustained period of time is a migrant, and if they do so for economic reasons, they are an economic migrant. And in general, there will be strict rules for migrants around what they can and can't access, depending on their nationality and their legal status. So if you're a migrant coming from the UK, you have almost the same rights as an Irish citizen. If you're coming from an EU country, again, you have quite similar rights, not all of the same rights as an Irish citizen. And if you're coming from outside the European Union, there's quite strict criteria around visa and everything. So the next one we're going to look at is refugee. And a refugee is a status that you gain when you're recognised as needing safety and protection, that it is not safe for you in your own country. And there's different categories within the refugee status, including the temporary beneficiary of temporary protection, which is the Ukrainian refugees. There is programme refugees who are acknowledged as needing protection when they're outside Ireland and resettled here through a scheme such as the resettlement programme. And then there's the people who gain refugee status through the asylum seeking process here in Ireland. And once they're recognised as being a refugee, they would have most of the same rights as an Irish citizen. They would be generally on a stamp 4. The Ukrainian refugees, beneficiaries of temporary protection, is actually an exception to that because there's no clarity what's going to happen after that 3-year directive ends. So Ukrainian refugees, for example, can't access the social housing list, but they can access social welfare, medical cards and things like that, subject to the same conditions that an Irish person can, for example, showing evidence of job seeking. And again, that's the thing, a refugee has the right to access social welfare, but under the same criteria as an Irish person. So to get job seekers allowance, you have to show evidence of job seeking. To qualify for a medical card, you have to be subject to the means test. Accessing work is the same. A refugee has the right to work. An asylum seeker does not immediately have the right to work, and there is a very limited payment while people are asylum seekers. An asylum seeker is somebody who comes to Ireland saying that it is not safe in their country of origin. And that can be for a wide variety of reasons. It could be that, they're afraid of their children being conscripted as child soldiers. It could be that they're afraid of daughters being forced to undergo female genital mutilation. It could be because of war. It could be because of ethnic civil conflict and discrimination against people because they are from an ethnic minority group in their country of origin. It's the International Protection Office that will make a decision on the claims, but it can take a lot of time because people may need to gather evidence. Claims may be denied and then there may be an appeals process. So it can be a long, complex process to go through. to gain asylum. It takes, while people are seeking asylum, they have to live in IPAS accommodation, and generally that's like one family to one room, or it may be like single adults that there's 3 or 4 to a room sharing that space. And they get very limited payments for the first almost 6 months. Asylum seekers can't work while they're in Ireland. They have to wait until they're here 6 months before they can apply for their work permits, and that takes time again to process for it to come through. And while they're not working, they can only access a very basic payment called the daily expense allowance, which is €38.80 per adult, €29.90 per child per week. And no access to child benefit or anything else. So it's a really difficult condition to live under. It's very challenging for people, and it's just, this is the system that we have under the direct provision system, and those are the conditions that people have. But you can see that there's differences between what an asylum seeker is, a refugee is, and a migrant is. If you have questions about those different statuses, if there's anything else that you would like me to cover in these, please let me know. The feedback link will be in the email. Thanks to those of you who've already submitted feedback, but keep it coming. Thank you very much for your time.